My true story from Tennessee. I wasn't invited to dinner, so I cooked my exit. My name is Dorothy Mae Patterson, and I'm 78 years old, writing to you from a small but beautiful apartment in Sunset Beach, Florida, just a few blocks from the Gulf of Mexico. The morning sun is streaming through my window as I write this, painting everything in shades of gold and hope. But I'm getting ahead of myself. You might wonder how a Tennessee farm girl like me ended up here, so far from everything I once called home. Well, pull up a chair, honey, and let me tell you a story about dignity, about family, and about the day I learned that sometimes loving someone means loving yourself enough to walk away. It all started 3 years ago when my beloved husband Robert passed away from a massive stroke. We'd been married for 54 beautiful, complicated, wonderful years, and his death left a hole in my heart bigger than the Grand Canyon. Robert and I had built what we thought was a good life together on our little farm outside of Nashville. We had 40 acres of rolling hills, a farmhouse that had been in Robert's family for 3 generations, and more memories than I could count. We raised 2 children, my son Michael and my daughter Sarah, and we thought we'd done right by them. We saved every penny we could, worked from dawn to dusk, and always made sure family came first. After Robert's funeral, which seemed to last forever and yet end too soon, I found myself rattling around in our old farmhouse like a dried pea in a pod. The silence was deafening. Every creak of the floorboards, every tick of the grandfather clock in the hallway, every whisper of wind through the oak trees outside reminded me that I was utterly, completely alone. The house that had once been filled with laughter and arguments and the smell of Sunday dinner now felt like a mausoleum. Michael, who lived about 20 minutes away with his wife Jennifer and their 2 teenage boys, Tyler and Jacob, suggested I sell the farm and move in with them. "Mom," he said one evening, taking my weathered hands in his strong ones, "you shouldn't be alone out here. What if something happens? What if you fall and no one finds you for days? We have plenty of room in our house, and the boys would love having their grandmother around all the time." At first, I hesitated. I'd been independent my whole life, and the thought of depending on anyone, even my own children, made me deeply uncomfortable. I'd always been the one taking care of everyone else, the one solving problems and making everything better. But the loneliness was eating me alive like a cancer, and winter was coming. The old farmhouse was drafty and expensive to heat, and the thought of spending the cold months alone, with nothing but my memories for company, seemed impossible to bear. So I agreed, thinking it would be temporary, just until I figured out what to do with the rest of my life. I had no idea that this decision would lead me on a journey of heartbreak and ultimately redemption. I sold the farm to a young couple from Memphis who promised to take good care of it and honor its history. The decision nearly broke my heart, but I knew Robert would have wanted me to be practical. With the money from the sale, nearly $300,000, I decided to help Michael and Jennifer pay off their mortgage completely. I figured it was the least I could do since they were opening their home to me, and I wanted to contribute something meaningful to their lives. I moved into their guest room, which Jennifer had decorated with some of my furniture and family photographs from the farm. She seemed genuinely happy to have me there, fussing over me like I was some kind of precious artifact. The boys, Tyler, who was 16, and Jacob, who was 14, were delighted to have their grandmother so close. They'd always loved visiting the farm, and now they could hear my stories whenever they wanted. For the first few months, everything was absolutely wonderful. I felt like I'd found my place in the world again. I cooked dinner most nights, using the recipes I'd perfected over 5 decades of marriage. I made Robert's favorite pot roast with carrots and potatoes, my grandmother's cornbread that was so good it could make you cry, and the apple pie that had won first place at the county fair 7 years running. The family gathered around the dinner table every single evening, and we'd talk about our days, share stories, and laugh until our sides hurt. I felt useful again, needed, like I had a real purpose in life. I helped Jennifer with all the household chores, did the grocery shopping every Tuesday and Friday, and even started a little vegetable garden in their backyard. I grew tomatoes, green beans, cucumbers, and herbs, just like I had on the farm. The boys would come to me with their problems, asking for advice about girls, school, their dreams for the future, and their fears about growing up. Tyler confided in me about his first girlfriend, and Jacob shared his worry about making the basketball team. I felt like the matriarch of the family, the wise elder who everyone turned to for guidance and comfort. But slowly, so gradually that I barely noticed it at first, things began to change. It started with small things that seemed insignificant. Jennifer began cooking dinner more often, saying she wanted to give me a break from all the work I'd been doing. When I offered to help or cook alongside her, she'd wave me away with a smile, saying, "Don't worry about it, Dorothy. You've done enough. You should relax and enjoy your retirement." The boys started eating their meals quickly and disappearing to their rooms to play video games or talk to their friends online. The long, leisurely dinners filled with conversation and laughter became rushed affairs where everyone seemed eager to be somewhere else. Michael would come home from work, tired and stressed, eat his dinner in relative silence, and retreat to his home office to work on his computer or watch television. The family dinners that had once been the highlight of my day, the thing I looked forward to most, became perfunctory gatherings. Conversation dwindled to discussions of schedules and logistics. Tyler has soccer practice tomorrow at 4. Jacob needs money for his school trip to Washington, D.C. I have a conference call at 8 with the clients from Atlanta. The warmth and closeness I'd felt in those early months began to slip away like water through my fingers, and I couldn't figure out how to hold on to it. I tried to convince myself that it was natural, that people get busy with their lives, that this was just the normal rhythm of family life. But deep down, I felt the shift happening, and it scared me more than I wanted to admit. I was becoming invisible in my own son's house, a ghost haunting the edges of their real life. The exclusion became more obvious and painful as time went on. Jennifer would make plans for the family without mentioning them to me until the last minute, if at all. I'd wake up on Saturday morning to find them loading the car for a day trip to the lake or a visit to Jennifer's sister in Memphis. "Oh, Dorothy," Jennifer would say when she saw me watching from the kitchen window, "we didn't want to bother you. We figured you'd want to rest and have some quiet time. You know how chaotic these family things can be." But I didn't want to rest. I didn't want quiet time. I wanted to be included. I wanted to be part of the family, not just someone who happened to live in the same house. I wanted to go to the lake and watch the boys swim. I wanted to meet Jennifer's relatives and share stories about my own family. I wanted to feel like I belonged somewhere. The boys stopped coming to me with their problems and secrets. When I asked Tyler about his girlfriend Sarah, he'd shrug and say, "It's fine, Grandma," before hurrying away to his room. Jacob, who used to love hearing my stories about the old days on the farm, would put in his earbuds when I started talking, clearly signaling that he wasn't interested in listening anymore. I began to feel like I was intruding on their lives, like my presence was more of a burden than a blessing. I started second-guessing every interaction, wondering if I was being too pushy, too needy, too much of an old-fashioned grandmother who didn't understand modern family dynamics. Michael seemed oblivious to the changes happening around him, or maybe he was just too busy and stressed to notice. He worked long hours at his job as a mechanical engineer, and when he came home, he was exhausted and preoccupied. He'd give me a quick kiss on the cheek and ask how my day was, but I could tell he wasn't really listening when I answered. His eyes would drift to his phone or the television, and I'd realize I was talking to myself. I started spending more and more time alone in my room, reading books from the library and working on crossword puzzles. I'd hear the family laughing and talking downstairs, and I'd wonder if they even noticed I wasn't there. Sometimes I'd come downstairs for a glass of water or to get something from the kitchen, and I'd find them all crowded around the kitchen island, sharing some inside joke or discussing plans I knew nothing about. The conversation would pause awkwardly when they saw me, and they'd smile politely before changing the subject to something safe and generic. I felt like I was living in a house with strangers who were being polite to me out of obligation rather than love. The close, warm family I'd thought I was joining had somehow transformed into something cold and distant, and I couldn't figure out what I'd done wrong or how to fix it. The final straw came on a Tuesday evening in October, almost 2 years after I'd moved in with them. I'd been trying to make peace with my new role in the family, trying to accept that things had changed and that I needed to adapt. I'd been making an effort to give them more space, to not impose my presence where it wasn't wanted, to be less demanding and more understanding. That afternoon, I'd been in the kitchen making my famous chicken and dumplings, the dish that had always been Michael's absolute favorite. It was a recipe I'd learned from my mother, who had learned it from her mother before her. It was a labor of love that took hours to prepare properly, with homemade dumplings that were light as clouds and chicken that fell off the bone. Michael had begged me to make it for him throughout his childhood, and even as an adult, he'd request it whenever he was feeling down or stressed about work. I'd noticed he'd been working late a lot lately, coming home with worry lines creased into his forehead, and I thought a home-cooked meal might cheer him up and remind him that he was loved. I'd spent the entire afternoon in the kitchen, browning the chicken, making the stock from scratch, rolling out the dumplings by hand, and simmering everything together with love and patience. As I was stirring the pot, breathing in the familiar, comforting aroma that reminded me of my own childhood, Jennifer came into the kitchen with her phone pressed to her ear. She was talking to her sister Linda, making plans for some kind of family dinner. I wasn't really listening until I heard her say, "Yes, we'll be there at 6 o'clock sharp, just the 4 of us like always." I looked up from the stove, confused and hurt. The 4 of us? Michael, Jennifer, Tyler, and Jacob. 4 people. Not 5, not including me. "Jennifer," I said quietly after she hung up the phone, my voice steady despite the hurt that was blooming in my chest like a poisonous flower. "What dinner are you talking about?" She looked surprised, as if she'd forgotten I was standing right there in the kitchen. "Oh, Dorothy. My sister Linda is having a family dinner tonight. You know, just immediate family members." She paused, seeming to realize how that sounded and how it might hurt me. "I mean, it's just going to be total chaos with all the kids running around everywhere. You probably wouldn't enjoy it very much. You know how loud and crazy Linda's house gets." "What time?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. 6 o'clock. We'll probably be back around 9 or 10, depending on how long the kids want to stay and play." I glanced at the clock on the stove. It was 4:30 in the afternoon. I'd been cooking for hours, making enough food to feed our entire family, and they were all leaving for dinner somewhere else, without me, without even thinking to invite me or ask if I wanted to come along. "I've been making chicken and dumplings," I said, gesturing toward the pot that was simmering on the stove, my voice sounding strange and distant even to my own ears. Jennifer's face fell, and for a moment, I saw genuine regret in her eyes. "Oh, Dorothy, I'm so sorry. I completely forgot you were cooking tonight. Maybe you can have it tomorrow, or freeze some of it for later in the week." I nodded slowly, turning back to the stove. "Of course, that's fine. That's perfectly fine." But it wasn't fine. Nothing about it was fine. I stood there stirring the pot, watching the steam rise from the food I'd made with so much love and care, and I felt something inside me break. Not just crack or bend, but shatter completely into a million pieces. It wasn't really about the dinner or the chicken and dumplings. It was about the fact that I'd become so invisible, so irrelevant to my own family, that they could make plans without even remembering I existed. I heard them getting ready upstairs, the sounds of showers running and closet doors opening and closing. Tyler came down first, his hair still damp from the shower, wearing a nice button-down shirt I'd never seen before. He looked handsome and grown up, and for a moment I felt proud of the young man he was becoming. "You look very nice, sweetheart," I said, smiling at him despite the pain in my heart. He glanced at me briefly and mumbled, "Thanks, Grandma," before grabbing his jacket from the coat closet and heading toward the front door. Jacob came down next, also dressed up for the family dinner I wasn't invited to, followed by Michael and Jennifer. They were all talking and laughing about something that had happened at Jennifer's work, some funny story about her boss and a client meeting that had gone wrong. They looked like a complete family, perfect and whole and happy. And I realized with a clarity that took my breath away that I wasn't part of that picture anymore. I was the extra piece that didn't fit anywhere, the leftover person who didn't belong. "We'll see you later, Mom," Michael said, giving me a quick, distracted hug. "Don't wait up for us. We might be pretty late." And then they were gone, leaving me alone with my chicken and dumplings and the echo of their laughter fading into the crisp October evening air. I stood in the kitchen for a long time after they left, staring at the pot on the stove, listening to the silence that seemed to press in on me from all sides. The smell that had filled me with such satisfaction and pride just hours earlier now made me feel nauseous. I turned off the burner and covered the pot, then walked slowly to my room, each step feeling like I was walking through quicksand. I sat on the edge of my bed, looking around at the space that had never really felt like mine. The furniture was familiar, pieces from my old life on the farm, but it was just furniture now. The photographs on the dresser were of a life that felt like it belonged to someone else, someone who had died along with Robert. I was 78 years old, and I was living like a stranger in my own son's house. That night, lying in bed staring at the ceiling, I made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to confront anyone or make a scene or guilt them into including me. I wasn't going to have a tearful conversation about how hurt I was or try to force them to see me as part of their family. I was going to do what I should have done months ago. I was going to take back my dignity and my independence and my right to be happy. Over the next few weeks, I began quietly and methodically planning my exit. I started by researching senior living communities in different states, looking for places where I could start over completely. I'd always loved the ocean, and Robert and I had honeymooned in Florida 54 years ago. I found a lovely apartment complex in a small coastal town called Sunset Beach, where the rent was reasonable and the neighbors seemed friendly. I called and spoke to the manager, a woman named Patricia, who seemed delighted to have me as a potential resident. I contacted a moving company and arranged for them to pack and transport my belongings. I opened a new bank account at a local branch and started transferring my money. I researched Medicare options and found doctors in my new area. I looked into activities and volunteer opportunities. I did all of this quietly, methodically, without saying a word to anyone in the house. The hardest part was deciding what to do about the money I'd given Michael and Jennifer for their mortgage. I'd helped them pay off their house completely, and now I was leaving. Part of me wanted to ask for some of it back, to help me start over in a new place. But I realized that would make it seem like I was leaving out of spite, like I was trying to punish them for not appreciating me. That wasn't what this was about at all. Instead, I decided to leave them a letter explaining my decision. I wanted them to understand that I wasn't angry or resentful, just heartbroken and ready to find my own happiness. I wanted them to know that I loved them enough to stop being a burden on their lives, even if they were too kind to tell me that's what I'd become. The moving truck came on a Thursday morning in November while everyone was at work or school. I'd timed it perfectly, knowing that no one would be home to see me go. I packed my clothes, my photographs, my mother's china, and Robert's tools. I left most of the furniture since it wouldn't fit in my new apartment, but I took the things that mattered most to me, the pieces that held memories I couldn't bear to leave behind. I left the letter on the kitchen counter right next to the recipe for chicken and dumplings that I'd written out in my own handwriting. I thought they might want to make it someday, maybe when they remembered how much they used to enjoy our family dinners together. The letter was simple and honest, written from my heart, my dearest family. By the time you read this, I'll be on my way to Florida to start a new chapter of my life. Please don't think this decision comes from anger or resentment, because it doesn't. It comes from love for you and love for myself. I've realized that I've been trying to hold on to something that no longer exists. The family I knew and loved has grown and changed, and that's natural and beautiful. Children grow up, parents get busy with work and responsibilities, and life moves forward. But I've been clinging to the past, trying to force myself into a picture where I no longer belong. I helped you pay off your house because I wanted to contribute to your happiness and security. That gift came with no strings attached, and I don't want any of it back. Consider it my way of saying thank you for opening your home to me when I was lost and alone after Robert died. I hope you'll understand that this isn't about the dinner invitations or the family gatherings I wasn't included in. It's about recognizing that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is step back and let people live their lives without feeling obligated to include you out of guilt or duty. I'm not disappearing forever. I'm just finding my own way again. I hope you'll visit me sometimes, and I hope you'll be proud of me for having the courage to start over at 78. All my love always. Mom and Grandma Dorothy. The drive to Florida took 2 days, and I stopped at a small motel in Georgia the first night. I'll admit I cried myself to sleep that first night, mourning the family I'd lost and the life I was leaving behind. But when I woke up the next morning and saw the sunrise streaming through the motel window, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, genuine excitement about the future. I arrived in Sunset Beach on a Friday afternoon in November. The apartment complex was even more beautiful than the pictures had shown, with palm trees swaying in the ocean breeze and the sound of waves crashing against the shore just a few blocks away. My new neighbors came out to welcome me, bringing casseroles and flowers and the kind of warm smiles I hadn't seen in months. Mrs. Rodriguez, who lived in the apartment next door, helped me unpack my boxes and get settled. She was a widow too, originally from New York, and she understood exactly what it felt like to start over late in life. "It's scary," she said, arranging my photographs on the dresser, "but it's also incredibly liberating. You get to decide who you want to be now, without anyone else's expectations or limitations." I've been here for 8 months now, and I can honestly say I'm happier than I've been in years. I've joined the local book club, where we read everything from romance novels to biographies. I started volunteering at the animal shelter, where I help socialize cats and dogs who are waiting for their forever homes. I learned to play bridge and discovered I'm actually quite good at it. I wake up every morning to the sound of the ocean, and I fall asleep every night feeling grateful for this beautiful life I've built for myself. Michael called me 3 days after I left, and I could hear the confusion and hurt in his voice. "Mom, why didn't you tell us you were unhappy? We could have worked things out. We could have done things differently." "Sweetheart," I said gently, "I wasn't unhappy because of anything you did wrong. I was unhappy because I was trying to be something I wasn't anymore. I was trying to be the mother and grandmother I used to be, instead of figuring out who I am now." He didn't understand at first, but over the months, our conversations have gotten easier and more honest. He and Jennifer have visited me twice, and the boys came for a week during spring break. When they're here, in my space, on my terms, we're able to connect in a way we couldn't when I was living in their shadow. Tyler told me that he missed my cooking, especially the chicken and dumplings, and Jacob said he wished he'd listened to more of my stories when I was living with them. I smiled and told them that I had plenty of stories left to tell, and they were welcome to hear them anytime they wanted. Jennifer apologized for excluding me from family events, and I could see that she genuinely felt bad about it. "I thought I was helping," she said during their last visit. "I thought you wanted to rest more, to not be bothered with all our chaos and noise." "I understand," I told her. "You were trying to be considerate. But sometimes what people need most is to feel needed and included. The truth is, I don't blame them for anything that happened. They were living their lives, focused on their own challenges and dreams, and I was trying to fit into a role that no longer existed. When Robert died, I stopped being half of a couple. When I moved in with Michael and Jennifer, I stopped being the matriarch of my own household. I was trying to be the grandmother I'd always been, but my grandchildren were growing up and didn't need me in the same way they used to. Moving to Florida wasn't about running away from my family. It was about running toward myself, toward the woman I could still become. It was about recognizing that I'm still a whole person, even without Robert, even without the central role I used to play in everyone else's lives. I've made wonderful new friends here, people who know me as Dorothy, not as Michael's mother or Tyler and Jacob's grandmother. I've joined a writing group where I share stories about growing up on a farm in Tennessee during the 1950s. I've started painting watercolors, something I always wanted to try but never had time for when I was busy taking care of everyone else. I've learned to use a computer so I can video chat with my family and send emails to my new friends. Last month, I met a gentleman named Frank at the community center. He's 81, a retired high school teacher from Ohio, and he makes me laugh until my sides hurt. We've been having coffee together every Tuesday morning, and he's teaching me to play chess, which is much more complicated than I expected. I'm not looking for another husband. No one could ever replace Robert. But it's wonderful to have a friend who sees me as an interesting, vibrant woman, not just someone's mother or grandmother. I think about the woman I was 3 years ago, lost and grieving and desperate to belong somewhere, anywhere. I think about the woman I was 2 years ago, trying to squeeze myself into a family that had already moved on without me. And I'm proud of the woman I am today, brave enough to start over, confident enough to build a life that belongs entirely to me. The ocean has taught me something important about endings and beginnings. Every day, the tide goes out, taking with it the footprints and sandcastles from the day before. And every day the tide comes back in, bringing new shells, new possibilities, new chances to build something beautiful. My old life in Tennessee was like the tide going out. It took with it my marriage, my farm, my role as the center of my family's universe. But this new life in Florida is like the tide coming in. It's brought me new friendships, new interests, new ways of seeing myself and the world around me. I still miss Robert every single day. I still love my family more than words can express. But I've learned that loving someone doesn't mean sacrificing yourself to make them comfortable. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is show them that it's possible to be happy and fulfilled on your own terms. To anyone reading this who might be struggling with similar feelings, I want you to know that it's never too late to start over. It's never too late to choose yourself, to demand more from life than just existing on the edges of other people's happiness. Yes, it's scary to leave behind everything familiar. Yes, it's hard to admit that the life you've been living isn't working anymore. But on the other side of that fear and uncertainty is the possibility of discovering who you really are when you're not trying to be who everyone else needs you to be. I'm 78 years old, and I feel like I'm just getting started. I'm learning new things every day, meeting new people, creating new memories, and building new dreams. I'm not somebody's wife or mother or grandmother first. I'm Dorothy Mae Patterson, and I'm finally learning what that means and what it feels like to be completely, authentically myself. The sunrise this morning was particularly beautiful, painting the sky in shades of coral and gold that took my breath away. I sat on my balcony with my coffee and watched the waves roll in, feeling grateful for this life I've built for myself. Tomorrow, Frank and I are going to the art museum in the next town over, and next week, I'm starting a cooking class where I'll learn to make dishes from around the world. I'm not running from my family anymore, and I'm not trying to force my way back into their lives. I'm simply living my own life, with all its joys and sorrows, challenges and triumphs. And you know what? It's more than enough. It's everything I never knew I wanted. If you're reading this and feeling invisible, feeling like you've lost yourself in the process of taking care of everyone else, please know that you have choices. You have value beyond what you can give to other people. You have the right to be happy, to be seen, to be appreciated for who you are, not just what you can do for others. Sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is walk away from a situation that isn't serving you, even when you love the people involved deeply. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is show others that it's possible to be whole and happy on your own, that you don't need to be taken care of or included out of obligation. I cooked my exit, not with anger or resentment, but with the quiet dignity of a woman who finally understood her own worth. And in doing so, I didn't just save myself. I showed my family that love doesn't require sacrifice of self, and that sometimes the most beautiful thing you can do is bloom wherever you choose to plant yourself. The ocean is calling to me now, and I think I'll take a long walk along the shore. The dolphins have been swimming close to the beach lately, and I love watching them play in the waves. After all, I have a beautiful life to live, and I'm not wasting another minute of it apologizing for taking up space in this world. With love and hope for your own new beginnings, Dorothy Mae Patterson, Sunset Beach, Florida.